And then the big segment. This was your crossover at the top of the hour. Tony Schiavone is in the ring, and he went into detail on his podcast that this was going to be the idea. He was going to introduce CM Punk before he came out, and then they made the call to just do it the way that they did, and then they said Schiavone will interview him on Wednesday's show instead. So before we get to this segment, Wai, did you watch the Road to Dynamite episode they dropped last night?
Yes, I did. Yeah, as I feel like a lot of people did. I imagine that's probably one of their highest, if not the highest, Road to that they probably had.
What would you pay on Fight TV if they offered you the Tim Walbert audio track for a pay-per-view?
It makes it hard to follow the wrestling, I will say. You know, if I don't know if I would watch a whole show like that, but the occasional peek into the truck, I think that'd be awesome. Yeah. What did you think of it?
I thought it was great. I thought it was like a really clever way to show this. Like we've put out the Punk, like the clip is there. Everyone has seen it. How do we re-air it in an interesting way? And I thought, whoever thought of this, what a brilliant idea, just to give a glimpse into an area you don't typically get to see and just kind of see kind of the magic of live television. And I mean, just watching the truck, like, man, when the pop airs and you've got the guys putting their arms in the air. And this guy, Tim Walbert, who was director in WWE for like 7 years. He's done Baltimore Orioles games. He's a total pro, as you could see, with his work there. And it was a real cool glimpse on what is an incredibly memorable segment. And now you had a whole different way of looking at it. This was AEW going the Jackie Brown route, finding an alternate set of eyes to watch the same scene.
I really enjoyed it. Obviously, you know, coming from our TV backgrounds, like it kind of brought back a lot of wonderful memories of doing live TV. But yeah, I think what I admire is just the idea to even use something like that. That, you know, if you're involved in production, that's just something you see every day. It's like about as, I don't know, typical as anything. It takes place like on every TV production, but to use that as a way to peek behind the curtain for an audience who has never perhaps been inside a truck or in a production studio, it was wildly fascinating. And I think gives a lot of people great appreciation for a very typical show. Even if a show, even like, I mean, Raw, you know, even like an episode of WWE Main Event, yeah, there's a lot of work being put into it that does not get that recognition. And that's the goal of the job, is to not necessarily have your audience say, wow, like, that's a great cut, that's a great dissolve. A job is done well when it's not noticeable in a case like that. And in a case when you notice it, like in the case of somebody shaking their camera really fast or a lot of cuts, and that's probably not very good either. Dude,
after this, I want to be inside that truck and hear those cuts. Cut the 5, yes. Cut the 4, cut the 5, 5. Jesus Christ.
I think he's probably just reading phone numbers.
Dude, he's probably like Mr. Testaverde on Saved by the Bell.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a great little bit of promotion. And, you know, I almost wish that they not only would have been able to show this, but the Tony Khan camera, the Khan cam, to see his reaction throughout that entire segment. That's really what
go watch the media scrum. I don't think there's a second that he's not smiling from the entire 50 minutes of that media scrum. That's probably what was on Tony Khan's face that entire segment.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very cool segment. As I can attest to, very cool to hear this. The only time it's not cool to hear all of this is when you're live on the show and your earpiece is left open and you're hearing all of this as you're speaking. Then it can be a little tough.
Might throw you off, yeah.
Sometimes. So he is out. Another monstrous reaction here for Punk. It was obviously the big attraction for everybody here in Milwaukee. Tony asks him, what was the one thing that brought you back? And Punk completely honestly just responds, I can't hear you, Tony. And he asks the question again. There's chants of ice cream bars that turn to CM Punk chants. He mentions Penta, Phoenix, Pillman, Jungle Boy. But before all of those guys, there's one person. and the crowd chants Darby. He is retiring the term voice of the voiceless because this place has a voice and there's people back there that listen. He's here because he watched Darby, and I see you. You are reckless to the point of destruction. And I look at the young talent, and people ask the question, can CM Punk still go? Does CM Punk still have what it takes? Can CM Punk still be the best in the world? If the answer is yes, it starts with Darby Allin, because he would have been my favorite wrestler when I was 15. He doesn't fit the mold of what someone else thinks a pro wrestler can be, but he's got heart. And he asks, can I be the best in the world? And the crowd erupts in chants of yes. And Punk is clearly taken aback as he really just softballed this to the crowd, and they went with it. And he says, that's somebody else's shtick. You might have to be a bit more patient. And the reaction from this crowd, I'm sure there were people that probably fainted from the man's words. He is not here to prove other people wrong. It's about proving himself right. And then he says hello to his wife, April, and that he loves her. And there he is off for his love-in with this Milwaukee crowd that are just going nuts for him. He hugs Tony Schiavone, leaves to a giant chant, and felt like the biggest star in this company, which he is today.
Which he is, yeah. You know, all in all, this didn't feel like it was a very long segment. But in terms of context, I feel like there's a whole lot we can talk about what was done here, whether intentional or unintentional. It didn't need to go, more than 10 minutes or however long this went. It feels like it even went like 5 or something like that. But this crowd, I'm probably assuming, was quite satisfied. He came out here, made the entrance, and put over a number of talents. And CM Punk is the type of person now, like, simply coming out here and mentioning a name like Penta, like mentioning a name like Jungle Boy, that does a whole lot to elevate their statuses. I mean, Britt Baker on Friday, like, simply mentioning her name, it brings her up to so many people who have not heard of that name before, but know CM Punk and are curious about what CM Punk has to say. But he spent the bulk of this promo putting over Darby Allin. And I would say what we got on Friday felt like it was very much like an emotional, real-life conversation from Phil Brooks, the man. Tonight kind of felt like our first pro wrestling performance from CM Punk. And I thought he did a great job of putting the focus on Allin. And, I look to see how they will further that interaction going ahead, because they have about 3 more appearances. You would think if he appears on every TV show from now until All Out, I can assume that they'll gradually introduce Allen's retorts, perhaps even get a bit physical prior to the match. But this feels like it's going at a bit more of a slower pace, and I'm happy. I mean, this whole build has been slow, a negative pace, without even mentioning the guy's name being there. So I'm happy with this, but I would also say maybe the biggest talking point coming out of it, again, perhaps unintentionally or intentionally, is pretty much the confirmation of Bryan Danielson coming his way to AEW and really starting the hype train for that.
Yeah, I mean, this is only going to heat that anticipation factor up. I'll be interested to see what they do next week for Darby and Punk, because like I said it Friday, I don't know how much more you really need to do. I think you're either just want to see Punk's first match, or I don't know what more really needs to be done, save for Punk maybe on the Friday doing more of just kind of doing a monologue on why I'm back here and what questions I have to ask. But again, he went over a lot of that in this promo as well. And this was like a different type of promo. Like Punk, when you think about his big promos, it's him commanding the mic and not just kind of playing off of somebody like Schiavone here. So this was kind of like a different dynamic, certainly different from Friday. But like, I think this pay-per-view has sold itself with Punk's involvement, and this, I don't think you have to really overthink this one. It's a match people want. You don't have to complicate things. You don't need Bret Hart and Vince McMahon, where what would make this to the next level? If we broke Bret's leg. I think that could take this to the next level.
No, I don't think that's happening, dude.
Rock and Hogan, they had this nice moment in the ring, but what if Hogan got into a semi in the next segment and drove into his truck and took out The Rock?
I have confidence that they're not going to go overboard with something like this. They know, I think the money pit that they're sitting on, all they have to do is just get to the match. But at the same time, I think this period can be very substantial for somebody like Darby Allin to have that spotlight on him. We know he's probably going to face Daniel Garcia coming up. This is a period where the spotlight is going to be put on him, and I think that's going to be Punk's job, is to get people's attention on Darby Allin these next few weeks. And I think some physicality might be warranted. At least,
who needs a promo is Darby, though. Darby needs a big promo. Absolutely. And I would do it, honestly, I'd do it next week in Chicago, and it'd just be the lights are out, and boom, the spotlight is on, and Darby is sitting cross-legged in the ring.
You know what he should do?
Cut a hell of a promo.
You know what he should say? He should say, I'm lactose intolerant. I hate ice cream. I like goat milk ice cream.
The buys are just flying after that. Yes, the anti-ice cream bar, Darby Allin. The last thing on this, for the pay-per-view itself, like, what role do you see Sting having?
It's one where I think I don't think he needs to accompany him ringside. Number one, it's a babyface situation. Sting, I don't think, really adds anything to that dynamic. So
the audience is going to choose to. I mean, this is going to be very much like a more giant version of Britt Baker and Red Velvet, where it's okay. Allin might be a babyface, but that crowd is going to be one way in that match.
Certainly, yeah, but
that's fine. That's always a cool dynamic when you have that kind of environment.
But I don't think they'll boo, Darby Allin. Like, I think he is pretty beloved too. I think they're going to look at it as a super fight between two of their favorites. But I also don't think Sting needs to be there. I think it's going to be one of those where it's like dad drops son off at the pool and says, like, catch you later,
I hope that exact scene happens where he drives up, catch you later.
Here's some lunch money.
Hey, son, don't forget to go all out there tonight.
What? Yeah.
Okay, that's better than goat milk. Okay, we are not.
Is goat milk even a thing? I don't even know.
I'm never having a goat milk ice cream bar. I promise you that. I'm not an ice cream bar person myself, but